when am I being generous on YouTube? To define generosity, I'm going to just play this clip by Internet Shaquille that I think explains it really well.
Top of these notes is a list called biases because I realize I'm a heavily biased person. A lot of this stuff is not going to be how to be successful on YouTube or how to have a really popular course online, because I think there's enough information out there regarding how to do that, how to chase the algorithms and such. And so this is a lot of attention is paid on gaining notoriety, and this is more so focused on applying generosity. And that's the word that I use the most when I talk about this sort of stuff. And I wish it wasn't, because it sounds like I'm canonizing myself, like I'm this huge saint for making 5-minute long YouTube videos. But generosity really is the only way I've found to frame this sort of stuff. Like digestible and applies to more people, but you get what you get in this case. And I think the more generous you can be, the more successful you stand to be as well. I think it's a direct correlation if you want it to be. And I think the way that I see it is, the example that I like to give is if you see somebody doing something cool and you say, oh, that looks easy, I could do that. That's not a very generous interpretation of the cool thing that you saw. However, if you said, that looks cool, that looks rewarding, I should try that, I think that's somebody who's more likely to produce work in a generous way. And I say produce work. I want to get this out there now. This is not about how to make content. I think the idea content as a meme word proliferated in a way that doesn't really matter anymore. But content was always a word for like Procter and Gamble to populate their Instagram. Like, you should not aim to make content. You should aim to make work that matters for people who care. There's my first of what will probably be many Seth Godin references. I think that once you start to see your work, as a body of work, you're less likely to write it off as just content. And I think that's probably a good thing. Back to generosity, I saw this video one time, it was probably 15 minutes long, where a guy experimented with making a bunch of different whipped creams and using a bunch of different stabilizing techniques and extra ingredients to show which stabilized whipped cream stays whipped the longest. That is a very generous act to do all of that work in the hopes of helping people make the most long-lasting whipped cream. So that's what I mean about generosity.
And within this context of generosity, with that definition of thinking about generosity, I was like, that's interesting, right? I was kind of inspired by watching that video and was like, where am I being generous? Does it apply to me? What he's saying is my purpose on YouTube to be generous or whatever, right? Am I embodying that? And if so, when? If not so, am I going to ever do it? Yeah. So this is what I'm going to try to answer it on this video. I was doing an overview of my channel or something like this, and I noticed that a couple of videos that have, I guess, that have stood out a little bit have been these music review videos. This one doesn't have a lot of views, like 100, but among the others, 30 views, 4 views, it stands out a little bit, right? And I have, like, my most successful video of this 100 video series has been a music review from a kind of an up-and-coming artist from here. And yeah, I don't want to like make a toot my own horn or whatever, but I think going back to his like skateboard, seeing someone skateboard and being like, ooh, that's cool, versus being like, whoa, that's so easy. I feel like my music reaction videos have achieved that a little bit of success, right? Because they are probably one of my most, I guess, generous in general in this definition, right? Because people, I think, care to see these generous interpretations about music, about cultural stuff, right? Finding and understanding references to previous music, other artists, cultural contexts, etc. People care about it. And I think that's one example of my videos that have been the most generous, you could say. Then, for most of my channel, I have stated, I think a couple of times, as someone in chat, Hania, reminded me of, that, yeah, wasn't that something you said in the beginning, like you wanted to make something for yourself to watch back on later? Because that is, I guess, my stated purpose of this channel is basically documenting, archival, etc., right? And I wondered, where is the generosity there, right? And I have, I guess, a couple of things that I do think have a certain sense of generosity, even though it's not evident, right? But I'm explaining them, I don't know, so it gets recorded, right? I think one of them is like self-generosity in a sense, right? It's going from a state of like, not generosity, right? Of being like, who gives a fuck, versus giving yourself a fuck, right? So giving yourself the benefit of the doubt. For example, in these videos, I am giving myself the benefit of the doubt, even if it's not evidently useful, or like it's not obvious why would this be useful in the future. It's kind of being open to it in the future, to it being useful in the future, right? It's being open to this video of me not saying that I don't like the word niche, or me this video talking with parasocially talking with some YouTuber, right? Of being open to those things being useful for future me in some context, right? And I think that is, in a sense, generosity, even though it's not as widely applicable as like actual generosity in making videos, that as Shaq mentioned it. And then another thing that I think is generous that I do regularly is this time stamping. I think this time stamping and structuring of information and like linking of the material that I mentioned in the video down in the description, I think it's a pretty base level, but still over, like way above many other channels. I think it is generous in a sense, right? It is trying to help people structure this information, or help more than people, myself, right? Try to help my future self in finding what parts could be interesting when to myself, right? And for the last point, which was something like, if not at this moment, when or why, I think that I will pivot eventually, or not sure if pivot, but additionally, I will also make videos that are intended to be more generous. The problem, and I do have like a couple of projects that are, I guess, more generosity focused in that sense, but I don't have the generosity approach, I guess, that internalized. So they are still kind of maybe not that generous. I don't know how to word it. But for example, I have a project that is how AI helped me run 10K, right? Because I think it's useful. It could be useful for people to learn how I did it, right? But I also don't want to be too prescriptive. So there's always a sense in which I can't find the right frame for it. But I have a couple of projects like that also pending. The problem is that my ideas are mostly never that generous. Most of my ideas are, I guess, more random, right? Or I guess curiosity based rather than generosity based, you could say, right? But this is the way I think about generosity right now, thanks to this video by Shaquille. And you can watch this video next, called You Should Watch Cooking Videos on YouTube, because I think Shaq is an embodiment of this phenomenon, of these YouTube cooking channels being so great. So watch that if you found this video interesting.